Hello, this is the training video for a Highlight Industries portable film force system. We're going to go over how to set up the equipment, how to run the software, and a little bit of troubleshooting at the end. You're going to start with your primary kit. Some systems are sold with only the primary kit. Some are sold with the add-on dual load cell package. I'm going to show how to demonstrate the entire system with all 3 load cells. It may not all apply to you, but this is a somewhat informal, all-in-one training video for those people that didn't have the opportunity or ability to come into Highlight for personal training. So you're going to start with your primary load cell. It's attached to a counterweight. This primary load cell is draped over the load that you'll be wrapping. There is a specific position that this load cell should be placed in. We'll get to that after we have set the rest of our load cells and counterweights up. If you try and position the load cell before attaching your other load cells and counterweights, they tend to shift and you're going to have to reposition it anyways. So I usually wait until after everything is on the load before positioning. Now, before I add on my second and third load cells, I'm going to add a second counterweight. The reason being that if you put on all the load cells at once with only one counterweight on the opposite side of the load, they may shift and slide off of the load. You'll notice that the load cell is on the side facing the tower. That is generally the best side to place the load cell. The reason being that most stretch wrappers have a slowdown period where they'll actually turn at a slower rate for the last half of a revolution. And when that stretch film that's being applied at a lower rate hits the load cells, it might have a different force to load reading than the rest of the standard wrapping cycle. And that can give you slightly odd results on your test results. Usually doesn't create a big difference, but something to be aware of. The exception to the rule where you would want to put the load cells on the side facing the tower is when you have an automatic wiper arm in the system. Those wiper arms can come out, and if they hit the load cells, you could risk damaging them. In that case, you'd want to, while you're facing the tower, put the load on the side of the load on the left-hand side. So because the load is rotating in a counterclockwise direction, you want to avoid these two sides because they're the last two to have film applied to them during that slowdown period. Now we've got one load cell and 2 counterweights attached onto the load. I'm going to attach our second and third load cells and then add our last counterweight. So by staggering what I'm adding onto the load, I keep everything from shifting off. This is how you want to do it if you're putting everything on by yourself. If you have someone to help you, they can hold one side, and so long as it's held steady, you can put them on in any order. Now, when you're applying your second and third load cells, you'll want to make sure that the bottom load cell is going to be fully captured by the bottom wrap. So you want the center of it to be roughly 10 inches from the bottom of the load. The second load cell, the middle load cell, you want in the center of the load. Now these straps that connect all the load cells are adjustable, so you'll want to take a look roughly where you want your load cell to go. I want it to go right about here, so I'm going to have to shorten up my strap 3 or 4 inches. So that's about right. I'll connect this. take out my bottom load cell. Look at this. I probably want to shorten it up by a couple of inches, not too much. I'll connect this as well. And now that all the load cells are on, I'll attach our force discs. These are found in the add-on kit if you've got a second and third load cell. If you've only got a single load cell kit, then this disc is found in the main kit right above the counterweight. Right. So you take these discs, place them in the center of the load cell. They screw into the load cell face. Be careful not to drop them. There we go. All right. These are all attached. I'll put on my last counterweight. Then we will set up the wireless and computer system. Okay. Your counterweights can also have their straps adjusted. The position of the counterweights is not important, as you're not collecting any information. Their only purpose is to counterbalance the load cells on the other side. I tend to keep the straps short though, because the further they are down on the load, the more they'll swing away as the load starts to rotate. So now all of our hardware is set up on the load. All of our load cells are positioned. Now we're going to take the cables coming from each of these load cells and connect them onto the base of the wireless unit. This can be done at any time, and these load cells can be attached in any order. The method that the computer uses to identify these load cells is based on a serial number that's burnt into them. So it doesn't matter if the top load cell is in the top position of the USB reader or the middle or the bottom, the computer will see it as being in the same position no matter what. Okay, 1, 2, 3 load cells all connected. We'll turn our wireless system on. We've got a green light from the LED. There are two different signals that you can get from the wireless system. You either get a solid green light, which indicates that the battery is charged and it's ready to go, or you get a blinking red light. If you have a blinking red light, that means that your battery power is low. If you have a blinking red light, if you have a solid green light and then the light changes to blinking red, you have somewhere between a half hour to an hour of battery life left. It's a signal not that your battery is going to die immediately, but that you should wrap up testing and start charging your system. Now we'll position our load cells. There's a positioning guide that comes with the system. It's a quick positioning sheet. There are instructions on this sheet, but the basics of it is you put this sheet in the upper left-hand corner of the load that you're going to wrap, and then this dark area is eclipsed by the base of the top load cell. This ensures that the center of the primary load cell is 10 inches from the top of the load and 18 inches from the left-hand side of the load that you're wrapping. These are ASTM D4649 specifications for testing containment force. A few other specifications that are in those same standards that this system meets is that we have a 6-inch diagonal disc, and it is 4 inches from the load face. I'm going to reposition this slightly. There. It's a little more even. Okay. So now that our system is all set up, the wireless unit is on, the battery is charged, we'll start the computer. I'll go over a little bit of the charger for the wireless system, and then we'll go on to our next area of this video, which will be operating the system software. So bring out our computer, turn it on. While that is booting up, we'll go over a couple of things with the charger. Portable film force system, whether you have one load cell or 3 with it, comes with a single smart charger. This charger will accept power sources from any source in the world, from 100 to 240 VAC. It is an American plug. It's an American plug, so you'll need an adapter for different wall outlets, but that's it. There are 2 settings on the charger. There's 0.9 amp and 1.8 amp. You'll want it to be set to the 1.8 amp setting. It won't create any harm if you're at 0.9 amps, but the system will charge half as slow. You can have the system either on or off while you're charging it. It will charge a little bit slower if the system is on while charging it, but it won't create any damage or any problems. There is an indicator light on the charger. When it's red, that means the system is charging. If there's no light, that means that you're not getting any sort of charge at all. There's no connection there. And if it's green, it means the system is completely charged. You can leave this on overnight. You can leave it plugged in beyond its maximum charge point. It won't create any damage or cause any problems. But once it's green, then that means your system is fully charged and you're ready to go. It takes about 4 hours to charge a completely dead battery to full charge, and when your battery is fully charged, the wireless system will run for 8 or more hours. So you can do a full US daily shift of testing. Now that our system is set up on the load and our wireless is turned on and we have the solid green light, all of our load cells are connected to the wireless system, we will set up our computer and go into the testing software. So this is the first screen that you'll see when you turn the computer on, the login screen. You'll need a password. That password is 2694. 2694, enter. System will start up. Now we'll access all of our wireless networks in range. We're going to be looking for the wireless that the portable film force system has created. It's called ASTM-MCJ and then a 5-digit number based on your machine serial number. Down here we'll click the wireless icon. It's next to the clock in the bottom right hand corner. If you're already connected to the ASTM network, then you can skip this step, but if you're not, then double click on ASTM. We'll connect. We'll want to give the system about 30 seconds to set up the load cell connection. That's happening in the background right now. Once you've given it 20 to 30 seconds, we'll double click the Portable Film Force System software icon. We'll go through a setup process when the software is started. The first screen of which is called Serial Port Setup. This screen will do two things in. One, we will establish and we will confirm that our wireless signal is successful and that our load cells are connected. The second thing is we'll position the load cells and assign where they are on the load in the software so that when we get our readings that everything is lined up and correct. So we'll go to the top cell drop down. You'll have a list of the different load cells. They'll be assigned COM numbers. You'll assign one. This light over here turns from red to green when we have a successful signal, and our number goes from 0 to whatever value is on the load cell. We'll want to do that for each of these drop downs, choosing a different number. Now we know our signal is successful and our load cells are all connected, but we don't know whether they're in the correct position. To figure this out, we'll have to do a series of trial and error where we will go to the actual load cells and apply pressure onto them and see which number pops up. So I'll actually go to the load cells, push on the top load cell, and we'll watch for which number in the screen jumps. So it should be at about 0, and now the values are jumping. For one of the load cells, 0, jumping, and which load cell did we have a reaction on? Okay, so we saw our first load cell, our top load cell had the value increase when I pressed on it. That means that that load cell is assigned correctly. Now, I'll press on the second load cell, the middle load cell, and we'll see which value jumps. That's the middle load cell, so that load cell is assigned correctly. We can do the same with the bottom load cell. And we see that that value jumps as well. So now we know that all of our load cells are assigned correctly. If, for instance, I went and pressed on the top load cell of the actual physical load cells on the load, and the bottom load cell's number increased, I would know that it was in the wrong position, and I would change my assignments accordingly until everything was correct, so that when I press the top load cell reacts. When I press the middle load cell reacts. When I press the bottom load cell reacts. These load cells, their COM numbers stay consistent from test to test. And like I said, it doesn't matter which USB port they're plugged into, they'll always be assigned the same. So once you've established which is which, you can go back to those and assign them in the software the same way each time. Now we've got our load cells connected, we know they're in the right position, and at this point we want to zero them out so that we're ready for testing. We clicked proceed on the last screen. Now we'll click the tare button. These values will go from whatever their default value is on the load cells down to a value close to 0. We have 0.02, 0.00, and 0.01. These values are not exactly 0, but they're close enough. 1/100th or 2/100ths of a pound is not going to make a large difference on our testing results. It's very, very accurate, and it's very good readings for our purposes. So now we'll click proceed testing. Before we do that, you'll notice that the new test button is ghosted out. It's not selectable. That's because you have to go through the setup process before you can start a new test. Now we'll click proceed testing, and the new test button is now available. It's also highlighted, so we're currently in the new test screen. The first thing when starting a new test that you have to do is assign a length of time that you're going to run your test for. We'll run a test for 1.5 minutes. We can run tests for up to several hours, for as long as the battery will last. Most tests only need to be done for a minute or two. You really, most of the time, what you want to be able to see is the entire wrap cycle that you're testing. So we want to be able to start collecting data before any film is applied. We want to collect data through the entire wrap cycle with every layer of film that's applied, and then we want a little bit of extra time after the wrap cycle is complete to see what our total values are at the top, middle, and bottom. So we'll go to 1.5 minutes. We'll click proceed. Here's our testing screen. In this area, this is where we'll graph out our results. On the x-axis, we have time in seconds. And on the y-axis, we'll have force in either pounds or kilograms, according to what you've selected. To toggle back and forth between units, you click this button down here to go from pounds to kilograms, pounds to kilograms. On the right-hand side, there are several buttons, a bunch of readouts. We'll get into those after we actually start testing. So at this point, what I'm going to do is we'll actually start our test. I'll start the wrapping cycle on the machine. We'll see our results graph out in real time, and we'll go over a few of the other things that we're seeing happen on the screen. So with that, we'll click start here, and now we'll start our test. And as the film is wrapped, we'll be able to see what our results are as they happen. So we have 3 different lines that appear on the screen. Each line is a different color, and it corresponds to a different load cell on the load. The red is the bottom load cell, green is the middle load cell, blue is the top load cell. So you see that red showed up first because we started wrapping at the bottom and moved towards the top. So then green, the middle load cell, shows up second. Blue, the top load cell, shows up last. Now we've done our top wraps and we're coming back down, so our other load cells will start to get some activity. And we see that the pattern here is kind of a step process. It kind of looks like a staircase. So each one of these steps is a different layer of film being applied onto the load. So for instance, the top load cell in blue, we see 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. There were 4 total layers of stretch film applied onto that top load cell. Up in the upper right hand side of the screen, we have 2 columns and 3 rows. The left hand column is the current reading on each of the load cells. The right hand column is the maximum reading on each of the load cells throughout the entire test. The top row are the readings for the top load cell, middle is for the middle load cell, bottom is for the bottom load cell. We have our start test and stop test. Those are pretty self-explanatory controls. Reset timer, this will bring you back to the previous screen where we entered the amount of time that we wish to run the test. Record data. We'll click that when we're satisfied we've completed our test and we want to save it. X scale adjustment. This is a function that's not used very often. What it does is it allows you to zoom in on the area of the graph that you are looking at according to the timing. So if I wanted to, for instance, look at just seconds 18 through 50, I would click on manual for X scale adjustment. I put my minimum in as 18 and my maximum in as 50, and that'll show me our results just from 18 seconds to 50 seconds. In most cases, you won't end up using this because you can see everything on the graph very clearly. There isn't much benefit to zooming in part way on this because we can see everything that's going on. However, if you were going to run a very long test, say for an hour or more, and you wanted to be able to see what happened during your wrap cycle, how many layers of film you had at the top, how many at the bottom, how many in the middle, well, all of that information would be compressed in the very beginning of the test because we're displaying an hour's worth of information. So if you want to be able to see what's really going on in that first minute, you go to your X scale adjustment. Instead of displaying an entire hour's worth of information, you show just seconds 0 through 60, and you get a much clearer idea of what's happening in there. So now that our test is complete, we have all of our information, starting with no film, applying our film through the wrap cycle, and our ending values. We'll click Record Data. Now we go to the data handling screen. There are two different ways that we can save the information that we just made. We can save a graph, which is an image of the information that we just got. It'll be an image of the graph. Or we can save data, which will create a text file with columns of numbers that represent the information that we just collected. In most cases, you'll want to create graph and save data to save all of the information possible. If you didn't want to, say, create the image, you just wanted to save the text file, you would click on the Save Data Only button. If you want to only save the image and not the text file, you would say Create Graph Only. Whatever you select, it'll appear in this box over here, and when you click Proceed, you'll move on to the next screen. The test properties screen, this information that we enter here will appear in our save files so that when we bring them up later or run comparisons, we get to see all this information and we know what the settings were while we were running our test. So first is a title. I'll call it example test. Film is unknown. Gauge is 80 gauge. You can also enter in micron here. Machine used was a Synergy 4. And additional comments, this is for any other information that you want to put in here. So if you're doing tests for a customer, you might want to put them in. For instance, if you were at John Smith Incorporated, I would type in John Smith Incorporated. If you were stretching the film to 200%, you can also type that in. If you were to run a cut and weigh test and wanted to include the results of that cut and weigh test in here, you would run that and then type in your results. I'm putting in 3.5 ounces. Now we'll click Create Graph and Save As. This will allow us to name the files that we create as well as choose their location. You can create graph and save, which will automatically assign a file name and location. In most cases you want to create graph and save as. That's what we'll select. We'll name this. First, we're saving our data file, which is in text format. It allows us to choose what units we want to save this in. I'll say pounds. Second, we'll create the image of the graph. That's seen in the background here. We'll choose PDF Creator from this drop-down menu. Click OK. Click Save. And now I'll name this as well. Click Save, and we'll get to see what that graph looks like. So this is our file. When you're satisfied with that, you can click out of it, and we're ready to run more tests. So at this point, we've run a test. We have everything saved. We can take that graph, we can send it by email to our customer, we can put it in our archives for review later, we can put it on a flash drive, a USB thumb drive, and share it with anybody that we like. And the data file can be used for several different things. This brings us to the other functions in the system, is replot, test, and comparison plot. So replot old test is for when you would like to view a test previously created. So we'll click this, and it's for single tests only. We'll select our text file that we'd like to regraph. We'll click test 1, and it shows us our graph. So this is, we're able to manipulate this at this point. We can change our units if we want. We can change what amount of time we view on the graph, and when we're satisfied with what we've got, we can click print and we'll be able to save another graph of this. If you don't want to save another graph, just click cancel and it'll discard it. The next function in the software is comparison plot. This is when you've run multiple tests changing one of the factors or multiple factors, such as, say, you're testing film A versus film B. You'd go into comparison plot after you'd run tests on both films, and then select both of the test files, and they'll graph side by side. You have 4 different options here. You can select just the top cells to compare against each other, just the middle, just the bottom, or all of the cells at once. You can compare up to 5 tests against each other together. If you need to compare 6 or more, you'll have to create multiple graphs. So we'll click Compare All Cells. We'll choose our first test. It asks us if we need more files. We say yes, and we'll choose our second test. It asks us if we need more files. I'll say no, because I only want to compare the 2. And we get our 2 graphs side by side. We see that the example that we just ran is in black at the top, middle, and bottom. A previous test that was ran is in red at the top, middle, and bottom. So now we can make a comparison, see how the films compare to each other, or how our wrap settings compare, or machines, anything that you want to have a side-by-side analysis of. If we want to save this, we'll click Print, select PDF Creator. Same process as saving a single test. I'll call this Comparison Test 1. Save this. And again, we get to see a quick view of what our graph looks like. This is a saved file now, and we can do whatever we need to with it, email it, save it, archive it, anything. Those are all the functions of the Portable Film Force System software. If for some reason you need to go back through setup, say you realize that you assigned the locations of your load cells incorrectly and need to change that, you can go to System Setup. Now I can change this from COM6 to COM5. It tells me duplicate cells are selected because I already have COM5 in the middle. Then I'll select COM6 for the middle, and I've just switched my load cells around. Or if I need to re-tear my load cells, I can go in, proceed to tear these out. To exit, click the red exit button in the top right hand corner, click the red button, and we're out of the software. We're going to take a very quick look at what to do when you run into issues. Everything that you should need is in your primary kit. Inside the plastic organizer pocket here, the first thing to go to is the Quick Help Guide. It's at the front of your pocket. The Quick Help Guide has a list in order of different things to check on your system. Starts on the front, goes on to the back. If you go through this entire list, you are still having problems, the second document to reference and go to is your operations manual. Your operations manual has a huge amount of information both on how to set up your system and what to expect with it, as well as step-by-step explanations of what everything is in the software and everything that should be included with the system, as well as details on the different components that are included in it. If you go through the operations manual and find that you're not able to solve your problem that you're experiencing with this, then call into Highlight, ask for Luke Venichuk or anyone in IT, and we'll be able to walk you through the issues that you're having. Your first line of defense is the Quick Help Guide. Your second route is the operations manual included. And your last resort is calling into Highlight and having us walk step by step through the issue that you're experiencing.